All right, guys, we are here with Max Linn, independent candidate in Maine running for Susan Collins' Senate seat. Uh, just for the people who aren't familiar with you, Max, could you introduce yourself and what part
Hi,
you're from?
sure. Max Linn, candidate for U.S. Senate here in Maine. I live in Bar Harbor. I promise to give you a good interview, and it'll be an interview that comes from experience.
All right. How long have you lived in Maine, Max?
Well, I've been visiting Maine now for over 30 years, but I've been a resident for 12 years.
All right. What brought you to Bar Harbor specifically?
The beauty of Maine, the wilderness of Maine, and specifically Acadia National Park.
All right. So jumping right into the questions we've got here. Lil Bill wants to know, is there any copyright or patent reform that you would support?
You have to be more specific, not right offhand, no.
Okay. And let's see. Question number 10 from user McDog. He asked about your opinion on the U.S. trade deficit. He said that most recently in July it was 63.6 billion. Do you have any plans, if elected, to help bring that down?
Well, that's a good question. I'm also a certified financial planner, and you would think that you'd want financial experience in Washington. We don't have that. The principle of our government, when it was created, was to have a small government that's fiscally responsible. And the government was supposed to be small and weak and transparent, and the people are supposed to be strong and private. And that's been completely flipped over in politics today. So today we have government supported by both Republicans and Democrats of being big and strong and private, and they want the people to be weak financially and transparent. So it's completely flipped over. And yes, our country is bankrupt. I'm to the school that we really don't have a Department of Secretary of the Treasury. He's the Secretary of Debt. We are a bankrupt country, and we're going to continue to print money. Both the Republicans print and the Democrats want to print. So there is no fiscally conservative party in Washington anymore. We are a bankrupt country, and both Tim, who's moderating this, Tim, good to hear you today, and all of your listeners, you're in for a tough time in America, because we're going to collapse our currency, and there's no way around that. You can't print trillions of dollars without having a very bad effect. In fact, what we see right now is, because the stimulus has been held up, our stock market is already going down. The only thing keeping us afloat right now financially is printing trillions, and that will come to an end. It is bad financial planning.
All right. Next question comes from Cybernetics. He asks, what are your views on Medicare for all?
Well, Medicare for all, medicine and seeing doctors should never bankrupt any families. It should never, ever take away your home. But you can't have it for all, because we can't afford it. We're a bankrupt country, and there is no one that can deny that. So Medicare, medicine for everybody for free isn't free. It costs trillions of dollars, and we are now bankrupt. We need a combination of government supported so people can get health care, but we don't want government for all for free, because then you'd have to wait 6 months or a year to get needed services. You need a combination of private and public, and that will never happen, never ever happen, as long as we have career politicians in office that do their bidding for the major global corporations who write the legislation. For all of you in school or law school, it's a fallacy to think that your representatives are representing you. They don't. They don't. And they're not going to, because they have to get reelected. And in order to do that, they have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And who they raise it from is the global corporations. And today, our politicians do not write the legislation. Our corporations do. And it always puts them in favor. So you can't help. You will never get any medical reform until you get citizen legislators in office and have term limits in Congress.
Would you be interested in a kind of campaign finance reform then?
Well, you need term limits. That is campaign finance reform by itself. Not until you get, not until a lot of your viewers might be too young for George Carlin, but it's a big private club. These Republicans and Democrats are all friends. They've been working together for 20, 30, 40, and sometimes 50 years. They're all friends. They just come out in public and they pretend they're arguing with each other. There's really no difference. There's very little difference between the Republican and Democratic parties. We have no fiscal responsibility. Both parties are war parties. Trump seems not to be, thank goodness. And so now we're in the longest war in American history, supported by both the Republicans and Democrats. Both the Republicans and Democrats both sign the Patriot Act every year. They both are for debt, and they argue about things like pro-choice and pro-life, but they still sign the National Defense Authorization Act, which really erases most of our Constitution and Bill of Rights. We're in a crisis right now. And the communists are not coming this way. They're already here. And our biggest threat to society is not the coronavirus. It's our members of Congress.
All right, next question we have here. So, of course, the Senate just confirmed Amy Coney Barrett, and Huss has a question related to that. Huss wants to know, what is your opinion on abortion policy?
Well, you know, it's so divisive. That's my opinion on it. It's crazy divisive, and we needed unity in our country. And so we get, you know, to be a Republican, you have to screen for pro-life, or you're not going to get past the primary. And if you're a Democrat, you're pro-choice. And so I've taken, since I'm running for office as an independent, I just speak my mind. Personally, my family, and me personally, I would be pro-life, but I would never legislate what any of your viewers or residents need to do with their lives. That's between their doctor, their religion, their family. So I don't think it's a political issue. If anything, it should definitely, under no conditions is it a federal issue. It could be a state issue, and each state can take it up. So it's so divisive. I mean, no one can deny that. And if we're going to live together in harmony, I'd give it to the states. So some states could be pro-life and some could be pro-choice. And if the people had if it was that important to them, they could move into various states. But we can't keep beating the drum that we have to have pro-life or pro-choice. Or we can, we do. But you see how divisive it is. What America needs is unity right now. And what we have is total division between men and women, black and white, pro-choice, pro-life. We are in a death spiral right now. I've done business probably in 12 different countries. I've owned real estate in Dubai. I've traveled the world a dozen times over. Our country is in crisis right now, and we're going to see it. We're not going to see it. We're already seeing it. If we can't wake up to the fact that things are really out of hand and off the chart and bad and getting worse, then I think all Americans need to get their heads out of their heads out of the sand and really take a look at what's going on.
All right. Next question we have here is from user McDog. With coronavirus, of course, we don't know really what the exact figures are. But before coronavirus hit, Maine's unemployment was higher than the national average. What are you going to do to bring jobs back to Maine?
Well, as an independent candidate, I have job experience, and the uniqueness about Maine is that right now, why the Republican and Democratic Party is spending $200 million on Maine. Maine is the single most important state, arguably, in the country right now. The most powerful state in America is Maine. That's why they're spending $200 million, because the Republicans want the power and the Democrats want the power. But who loses the power is the state of Maine. Right now, Maine's the most powerful. The people of Maine are the most important voters in the country. And if Susan and Sarah, either one of them win, Maine becomes a zero again. Maine becomes a little rural state up on the Canadian border. If I win, Maine becomes and stays all powerful for 6 years, because no legislation arguably gets passed without coming through me, which represents Maine. So Maine would become wealthier than they've ever been in their history. But unfortunately, most people are still locked into their parties. I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, or I'm a New England Patriot. The analogy being, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, And you know, Tim, the most confusing thing, and to your person who asked the question, the most confusing thing I find right now is throughout the entire country in Maine, people, Republicans, Democrats, independents, black, white, doesn't matter, men, women, they say they want change in Washington. I am here giving them a crystal clear opportunity for change. And there's a lot of good citizen legislators throughout the country saying they want change, but the people are going to get exactly what they deserve, which is not a good thing, because they don't deserve a good thing, because they keep sending the same people back to Washington hoping for a different outcome, and they're not going to get it. So I'm very puzzled by this. We want change. Here I am representing change, the perfect businessman with experience, 60 years old, independent, standing up for Maine rights, standing up for the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and people say crazy things like, well, you don't have experience. Well, then fine. Send the same people back and get more of what you have. I represent change. I represent a citizen legislator. I have more experience than any of my opponents in life and in politics.
All right. Our next question comes from user Ito Ibo. They ask, what is your position on raising the minimum wage to $15 and then pegging it to inflation?
Well, I'm against it. We make more money by competition. And what would do that is stopping immigration. Stopping the immigration coming in would automatically raise salaries and wages. What happens is American people have been legislated out of jobs. American people have been legislated into bankruptcy by our current politicians. It didn't used to be this way. They wrote legislation that took all our jobs out of the country. Okay, we have to stop this illegal immigration, and or you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to do anything. But if you want higher wages, you stop this illegal immigration. No more cheap labor, and that will automatically drive prices up. Because right now, the big corporations and a lot of these companies live on cheap labor from illegal immigration. It's a humanitarian crisis. I won't go into details of my platform, but there's an easy way you can document them without giving them a path to citizenship. And that way, they would make more money, their living standards are better, and American wages would go up by stopping illegal immigration.
All right, next question from the same user. What are your thoughts on universal college, or rather free college, or even a different variation, free trade schools?
Right. Well, again, as a certified financial planner, I'm not a person who really beats the drum for anything or very little free, because I think if you get it for free, you don't respect it. But the reality is, Americans have been sold down the river again with college educations. That's because of government involvement, not capitalism. Why college educations are so expensive right now is because government involvement. They basically told now their student loan debt is 1.6 trillion with 50 million Americans with student loan debt. I believe that should be forgiven. That's a direct people bailout, as opposed to corporations writing out the bailout plans, and they suck up all the money and the citizens get nickels and dimes. I am a citizen legislator. I represent people, and in this case, Maine. Your current representatives can't. They're not allowed to. They're good. I'm sure they're good men and women, but the system is rigged. The system is broken for people. It's not rigged or broke. It's rigged for big corporations. They fund your campaign. If someone gives me $50 million, or Tim, if you're running for office and someone gives you $50 million, here's what I can promise your listeners. Someone gives you $50 or $100 million and you win the election, you're not going to tell that person when they come in your office to get out, I don't want to talk to you. They become your partner, because that's human nature. And our elected officials today, Republicans and Democrats, are beholden to the corporations that fund their campaigns. I think they're spending over $5 billion in politics this year. Hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. They don't come from the citizens. They come from global corporations, that global interests that write the legislation, and then they give it to lobbyists that go to the representatives and say, put your name on this and sponsor this bill. And here's how you can, bullshit the people and pretend it's good for them. But who it's actually good for is the big corporations. They've become bigger and stronger, and the people have become poorer and weaker. So America has to get, the critical point is, you need citizen legislators in there that are going to support term limits, number one, and that in itself would help take the money out of big politics.
All right. So we do have a few listeners from Maine, and I of course reached out to them ahead of this. And one thing that every single one of them has wanted to know your opinion on is the corridor.
Well, I'm the only candidate that I'm against the CMP corridor. I filed a lawsuit against them. I'm an environmentalist. And so clearly, I am the only candidate against the CMP corridor. I filed a lawsuit. And what Mainers don't realize, and the sad thing is, I really feel times aren't hard enough for the American people and the people of Maine to wake up and say, it really matters who you send to Washington. Because if I was a senator, I could stop it in the Senate if the lawsuit doesn't go through. Sarah and Susan support the CMP corridor and support the destruction of 147 miles being clear-cut in our precious sacred lands of the environmental Maine. Okay, I'm the only candidate. Why? This is the confusing part. There's one thing. I'm the only person who can stop the CMP corridor. The only one. Why aren't the people who agree with me in that, which there's a lot, all flock here? Why don't all the Second Amendment rights people flocking to me? I'm the only one supporting the Second Amendment. Why aren't all the people who want to stop immigration coming to me? I'll tell you why. Because I'm a third-party candidate. I'm a citizen legislator. Even though they say they want change, they speak louder with their vote. They give excuses that, well, I heard Susan Collins, we need her in office because she's going to vote for the Supreme Court. Well, Ginsburg died early, and she voted against the Supreme Court nomination. Okay, so I'm not down the road Republican or Democrat. I like some of the Democrat views, some of the Republican views. Personally, I'm fiscally responsible first and foremost because we're a bankrupt country. We're going to pay a big price. But socially, I'm very liberal. But I'm an environmentalist, bar none.
All right, next question we have here is from user McDog. He asks, during the first Maine Senate debate, you famously said, request denied. How do you think that debate went?
Well, it went extremely well. All my debates have been well thought out and well planned. I'm competing against $200 million. So in the first debate, if you listen to my opening, it said, I have to be outside the norm. I have to go and be different to create an interest as people to look and say, who is that? And so that request denied was planned. At the beginning of the debate, I said, I have to be outside the box to compete about that. So I went outside the box, hoping to get some front page news. And I did in the second debate where I cut up the mask with scissors. And here's the funny thing, listeners and viewers. It worked so well. I got so much national press. I was in Forbes magazine, USA Today, New York Post. It went national. It went viral. But you know what? None of the news in Maine carried me. I wanted to go outside the box. That was the plan, which I said at my opening. I said I have to go outside the box. I have to do this in order to let people know I'm in the race. Still today, a lot of people in Maine don't even know my name, know that I'm in the race. So I get Newsweek, front page of Newsweek. I get front page of Forbes, but I can't get a front page of any literature or any paper or news story in Maine. It's horrible. The establishment's so strong, and the people are going to continue to get spanked financially, and eventually this whole thing's going to collapse, and I think it's right down the road. Remember, certified financial planner for 35 years. There's no one in Congress that has more experience in financial planning and economics than me in Congress, much less my opponents who couldn't lead their way out of a wet paper bag. They're nice people, but they're weak candidates. They're establishment candidates. So I can assure you, Maine's going to pay a big financial price, and so will America, by not getting a citizen legislator in office. And that's the confusing part. People are yelling for change. I'm trying to do that timing thing in the debate and say, here I am doing a little something outside the box to get attention. And the only attention I get is national press, no state press.
All right, so one of the things that we've seen change in our society over time is how the nuclear family model works. The idea of one parent working while one parent stays at home, supports the house and the children, is increasingly becoming a middle class or upper class luxury.
Mhm.
One user we have from Maine, Angela, wants to know, what are your thoughts on government supported or funded childcare?
Right, right. Well, you need that's a good point. Uh, uh, I would support that, but not on a permanent basis. This generational, we need welfare and social services, absolutely, but it's there as a safety net, not a king size bed for life. So I'm there to help people when they're in crisis, but not to give free stuff away for life. My other opponents, especially on the Sarah side, they're just economically illiterate. They just think everything's free and to print money. And this seems to be the drumbeat of the Democratic Party, but now it's the drumbeat of the Republican Party. Washington has lost all their economic senses. And the American people, the middle class, the people struggling, are going to pay a very dear price for the legislation that's already been passed and is going to continue to be passed. That's what I can promise you. Safety nets are good. Permanent welfareism is crushing our society. So I'm against it on a permanent basis, only on an emergency needed basis.
All right. Next question we have here is from user Leon. He asks, says, sorry, rather, that there's a great amount of tensions between America and Canada, particularly their fishermen, over lobster in the gray zone, a stretch of 277 miles that both countries have claimed since, I think, the Revolutionary War. Uh, Leon wants to know, how will you defend one of Maine's biggest exports without damaging relations with Canada?
Well, I do it by negotiating. Okay, and that's the thing is Susan and Sarah can't negotiate. They're with the party. So what happens if Sarah and Susan win, all the power, all the negotiation goes to Mitch McConnell on the Republican side if Susan wins, or if Sarah wins, it goes to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And do you think any of the Democrat or political leadership gives a damn about Portland, Maine, or rural Maine, or Maine lobster? Not a damn. With me in office, I represent the lobster fishermen with power and influence there. So I could sit down and really make a difference for our lobster fishermen. And that's a complex issue, so I'd have to sit down and look at it. But the bottom line is, you can't compare my experience in negotiating deals with Sarah or Susan. They have none, and I have 35 years of it, internationally and domestically.
All right. Uh, Next question here comes from Lil Bill. What are your thoughts around the situation in Nigeria, and is there anything that the U.S. should do?
I'm not, you'd have to be more specific. There's stuff going all around the world you have to tell me about. Right now, America's in crisis. So America is in, let me share with you, which you don't, and a lot of Mainers and Americans really don't realize it. And I don't know where you are, but America is in crisis. So my focus is on America first. So I'm not up on exactly what all these African countries are doing, nor is that my focal point. It's the state of Maine and it's America. So if you give me a more specific question on what's going on there, perhaps I can answer it. But I assure you, it's not a top priority of mine. We have to keep our eye on the ball. And number one, we want to keep them out of America. Stop immigration, especially non-merit-based immigration. We got to bring people in. Think of America as your house. If you let people in your house, they've got to behave. And if they get in your house, they're not going to sit there and just live off you and have you wait on them and feed them and buy them stuff for life. You want merit-based immigration. You want people to contribute. So the questioner would have to be more specific.
Sure. So the situation in Nigeria is, as we've had for a few months here, protests around police violence. It's been a kind of global phenomenon, but in Nigeria, it took a very different turn. The protests were mainly focused around a police unit, SARS, and the army there has repeatedly opened fire on protesters, killing 51 civilians and injuring thousands, and the protest became violent with 11 policemen and 7 soldiers killed. Lil Bill wants to know, is there anything the U.S. should do to intervene or issue sanctions?
Yeah, number one, we've seen what being the police of the world does. It bankrupts America, and it doesn't do any good for anybody. Yeah, that's a shame. It's terrible. But as a senator, it's not even, I don't get it. Let Trump or Biden deal with that. But I don't want to be police of the world. I want to get out of all wars, and I want to focus on Americans' needs. You know, there's an old saying that charity begins where, Tim? Charity begins where? Charity begins at home. And maybe 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when we were a rich country, we can start helping other people. But right now, I don't think your listener realizes, America's bankrupt. We're in crisis. The government is telling us what businesses are essential and which aren't. They're telling us to put diapers on our faces. They're telling young children to put masks on, which are bad for them. We're in crisis. The government is taking over our lives. There's more important things than worrying about small African nations. Yeah, it's a shame. I hate to see that, but America's in crisis, so I'm an American first guy.
All right, so that leads us directly into our next question here. Of course, Bath Iron Works is one of the largest employers in Maine, in, of course, the defense industry. Maine also has many others, like General Dynamics. What are your views on military spending, and how do you think that will impact Maine voters?
Well, military spending has been out of control for 30 years. It's helped bankrupt our country, and now we've printed trillions of dollars. We're done. We are done economically as a country. Our dollar's going to collapse, and things are going to get really, really bad, and we're going to print a lot more trillions, and it's going to escalate. So I can promise our viewers, spending more money on war issues is not what I want. Now, I did go to, when Bath Iron was on strike, I went there in support of Bath Iron Works. But first and foremost, I'm not for more military spending. But if they're going to do military spending, which they're going to do, of course, I'm going to fight for Maine and getting money into Maine. I mean, that's pretty, and no one could fight for Bath Iron Works and Maine stronger than me. It's impossible, because I'm the independent candidate, and if Biden's in office, if I'm in office, think about this, and I'm the independent candidate, and it's a balance of power. That's why the Democrats are fighting for Sarah, and that's why the Republicans are fighting for Susan, spending an all-time record of money, because it's that important for the balance of power and influence. So if I was in office, if Biden wins, the Biden administration would have to come to me and negotiate deals. And guess what gets negotiated with me? The state of Maine. If Trump's in office, and there's a lot of things I don't agree with regarding Donald Trump, I want to hold his feet to the fire on a lot of things, including the environment and the irresponsible spending. But if Trump's in office, they're going to want my vote also. So either administration would have to negotiate with the state of Maine. Maine would become more powerful with me in office than they ever have in the history of their existence. And yet people say, no, I'm going to throw my vote away. I'm going to vote for a Sarah Susan and give the power to the Republican leadership, Mitch McConnell, or the Democratic leadership, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And they don't give a damn about Maine, Bath Iron Works, or Portland, Maine, much less rural Maine. I do.
All right. Excuse me. Our next question comes from a user, Mr. Super Guy. He says that the World Health Organization guidelines suggest wearing masks. Why are you opposed to wearing masks?
Well, 1 week they do, 1 week they don't. Okay, so that's terrible. It's simply not true. And I'll share with the listeners this mask thing. Number one, if some business or an individual wants me to wear a mask, I'm completely compliant. What I'm against is the government, the federal government or state government, telling us that one size fits all. I even highlighted, I thought you might bring this up. There is, tell your listener to pull up on Google the Barrington Declaration. There are now 40,000 scientists and doctors, and Barrington, because 3 of the leading infectious disease scientists, one from Harvard, one from Oxford, and one from Stanford got together. There are now 40,000 scientists and educators saying what we're doing is absolutely wrong. And not only is it wrong and is it hurting health, and it's hurting more people than it's helping, but it's a government intrusion, which is a complete offense to our Constitution and Bill of Rights. The government has no business telling me what business is essential and what isn't. What business can be open, what can't. And the businesses that can be open, how many people are allowed inside? And they have no business telling me what, that I have to put a mask on my face. That's not the government's role. Now, you're saying, gee, it's working over in China. That's a communist country. And these communist countries are different than America. Until the American people tune into where they're from and who they are, which is a independent and responsible for their own actions, we're going to go down the road of more and more bigger government. There's right now record amounts of suicides and drug death. Well, the facts and statistics don't care about your feelings or opinions. The facts and statistics show that this whole lockdown is much worse than the virus. And that goes without saying. Those facts and figures are now out. And especially for young children. It's like, and again, just go to pull up Barrington Declaration. Skip what I'm saying. Let's listen to 40,000 experts that says what America is doing is exactly the wrong thing. Take me out of the equation.
All right, Barrington Declaration. I'll look at it. I've not heard that before this.
Yeah.
The next question we have is from one of our Irish users, Joel. He wants to know, do you think the communist threat is real? And if so, how dangerous is it in your view?
And what's the listener's name?
Joel.
And what did you say about Irish?
Oh, he's from Ireland.
Oh, okay. Well, my middle name's Patrick. There you go. So I've got Irish in it. Well, the communist threat is very real. The communists aren't coming. They're here. They're here and stronger than they've ever been. And to deny that would just keeping your head in the sand. I mean, think about this, Tim. Think about this. If 5 years ago, I told you, you know what? Pretty soon America is going to tell you what businesses are essential and which are not. In fact, the businesses that they deem non-essential, they're going to make you close. And the businesses that are essential, that they allow to be open, they're going to limit how many people come in, and they're going to tell you how many feet you must stand apart from each other. And then they're going to make all Americans wear masks. You would have to say, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind, but that's what's happening. This is an absolute power play. The Communist Party of China, the Communist Party of Russia, and all they know is government controls the people. Communism is here full stride. And if the American people can't see it, then they have their head in the sand. But here's what's going to happen. There's no doubt, at 60 years old, experience tells me that people don't respect what they have until they lose it. We right now are in the process of losing our freedoms and liberties, and it is going to continue. And we are going to bankrupt our dollar, and it's going to be hard times are coming on the American people. I just hope that at some time the American people wake up before it's too late, and right now it doesn't look that way. That's why my timing getting in this race for a reason. We must fight communism, or you don't. There's people that are for it, and people are against it. I stand up one who supports the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the dream of a government that's controlled by the people and not a hierarchy. Because all throughout time you have governments that control the people, and governments and religion control people. American experiment is just an experiment in self-government, and we are failing that experiment. And communism isn't new. It's the American ideals of freedom and independence and self-government that is new. And we are indeed losing that.
All right. So next question here. We have, of course, in Maine, a very strong craft brewing industry. Do you have a favorite Maine beer?
No, I like the microbreweries. I don't have a favorite one, but I definitely support the craft brewing industry. And no, I don't have a favorite one. I like a lot of. Is there one? There's one. There's a brewery, I believe, in Bucksport. I forget the name of it. Fry's or
Fry's Leap?
Is it Fry's Leap? There's a couple good ones out there. It might be Monks. There's a lot of good beers, but the best beers are definitely from the microbreweries.
All right. So I know you've got another interview here shortly. Are there any top policy priorities you have that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to speak a little bit about?
Yeah, I'd like to read something off or say something to your viewers regarding the current crisis in the inner city. We see that in Philadelphia right now, where a policeman shot an African American that was attacking him with a knife, and now we have endless riots. Are you with me on that, Tim? You're aware of that, correct?
I think that was the incident in Kenosha or Wisconsin, at least. Is that
Yeah,
right?
but this whole year, right now there's a lot of controversy with Black Lives Matter, right? So let me share this. Today, with the riots in our streets, the narrative of institutional and systemic racism, not police or law enforcement, is the most destructive obstacle facing America and the Black community in modern history. Even more destructive than the 40 years of institutional and generational welfare state that is the actual reason for the dismantling of the Black family structure. Today, the political establishment, not white American people, have systematically destroyed the Black family structure by replacing the Black husband with government, compounded by the incentivization of Black mothers through welfare to have no homes, more children, no jobs, no husband, no education, or limited education at best, and wasteful social programs. The culture of entitlement and victim identity is a horrible form of social control and oppression, and today is the narrative that will take generations. It will take generations to come out of, if in fact they can ever come out of it. The success of America is dependent on the future success of the Black community. Today, America is being sold a bill of goods by supporting generational welfare and victimization and systemic racism. America at its core is about individualism, independence, self-reliance, and self-responsibility, not victimization. I have created a specific dialogue website, and the name of that website is blacklivesmatternationalservice.com. That's right, blacklivesmatternationalservice.com, which is a dialogue website to address the problems and challenges we're having with Black Lives Matter. Again, blacklivesmatternationalservice.com. Check it out. We would love your comments. And it's to create dialogue and stimulate thought. And thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Max, and good luck with the next interview.
Thank you so much.
All right. You have a good day, sir.
Yeah, you too.